Hi, I'm Arun George, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at why Mumbai is falling short of beds for COVID 19 patients. We'll also take a look at Cyclone Ampan that is expected to hit the eastern states of Odisha and West Bengal. But first, we're going to decode the statistics that describe how India is dealing with the COVID 19 pandemic. On Monday, the number of coronavirus infections in India crossed the 1 lakh mark, with over 4,500 new cases being discovered. This now means there are only 10 countries with more cases than India. But what does this number mean? Ever since the pandemic hit India, there has been a deluge of data. We have a doubling rate, R naught, infected cases, deaths, recovery rate, and other statistics to consider daily. As India learns to live with the virus, what are the numbers we need to worry about? And has the lockdown helped control these numbers? Amitabh Sinha, the Indian Express's resident editor of Pune, who writes on science and environment, has been actively tracking the numbers associated with the pandemic for weeks now. We started by asking him to explain the spike in numbers that we're seeing as we ease lockdown measures. So, on Monday, as states opened up more, there was a spike in the number of cases and deaths. How worrying is a rise in the cases, or is this something we've been prepared for?
Right. Now, the rise in cases is something that is expected. We were having a lockdown since March 24th, and from 4th of March, if you remember, the restrictions have been eased somewhat and they have been progressively being relaxed over the last 2 weeks. So the numbers would be rising. That is the expectation. In fact, it's a little surprising that we haven't still seen a major surge. So what we did see on Monday was that the numbers crossed 5,000 for the first time. I mean, the daily increase in numbers. Before that, just 2 days earlier, India was recording between 38 to 3,900 cases every day. So the way it happens is it stays in a particular range for 4, 5, 6 days, maybe a week, and then jumps to a new normal, and then again stays there around in that range for about a week or so, and then jumps again. So it's possible that 5,000 is likely to become the new normal as we go forward. Sunday was 5,000 for the first time, and Monday, that is yesterday, we saw about 4,600 or 4,700 cases, and two states are yet to report. So Delhi and Odisha have not yet reported their Monday numbers. So we would see somewhere around 5,000 again. Now 5,000 would be normal for the coming few days.
So, Amitabh, we've had a lot of numbers being thrown at us daily, right? We've had a recovery rate, there's a doubling rate, there's an R naught. When you're a layperson, sometimes this information overloads a little overwhelming. So, what are the numbers that we should be looking at when we need to get a sense of how things are going?
Yeah, so each of these numbers that you have talked about helps us understand the spread of the disease in different manners. They describe the same phenomena in different ways.
Amitabh says there are data points like the number of active cases, which is the number of people who have tested positive for the virus and haven't recovered or died. There's R naught, which indicates the number of people who have caught the virus from an infected person. Amitabh says this statistic gives a good idea about how fast the disease is spreading.
So if I am infecting 3 persons on an average, so every infected person infects 3 persons on an average, then it will spread at a much faster rate than, say, if every person was infecting only 2 people on an average. So that gives an idea of how fast it is spreading. Similarly, we talk about the doubling time. Now, doubling time is another sort of a number to look at, which gives us an idea of how fast the cases are rising in India. So doubling time actually refers to the number of days in which the caseload doubles. So if India has 100,000 cases today, then in how many days the number would double to 200,000 cases? So if the doubling time is shorter, meaning, say, if the doubling time is just about 10 days, then the disease is spreading at a much faster rate than compared to if the doubling time is, say, 15 days. So right now, India has a doubling time of about 13.5 days. And this keeps on changing every day because the numbers keep changing every day. So right now, India has a doubling time of about 13.5 days. It was over this month, it was consistently, even though marginally, it was slowing down. So it went on from about 11.5 days. It has gone down and become longer and longer and has reached somewhere around 13.8 days. But in the last 2 days, it has started coming back. It means it is spreading faster in the last 2 days. So these are different numbers to just capture the kind of thing that we are seeing in terms of the spread of the disease. And doubling time is actually a good number to track. The recovery rate, not so much as of now, mainly because, as of now, the recovery rate is just about 30 to 35% people. But eventually, when the epidemic is over, we know that probably 95 to 98% of the people would ultimately recover. Very few people would not recover from this. In fact, more than 98% people would recover. So as of now, to showcase the recovery rate as something of the health of this disease in India, that would be slightly misleading, because as of now, recovery rate is nothing to tout as of now. Ultimately, it would go up to 98% or even more.
So, one thing that's also been happening is India has been sitting and comparing its numbers with other nations. We've been touting them as proof that we've kind of tackled the disease better. Is that premature?
Well, some amount of comparison is inevitable, even though we must realize that the nature of spread is very different in different countries, and it depends on lots of factors, the population and population size and population density, the kind of lockdown and restrictions that have been imposed, the effectiveness of those lockdowns, meaning how strictly are those lockdown enforced. There may be other factors as well. So it depends on lots of these things. But then we can't even avoid comparing our numbers. And then comparison is fine as long as we look at other countries and say, okay, we seem to be in a better position than the others. The problem comes in when we start assigning reasons to why we seem to be doing better. Because right now we do not even know whether we are doing better than others. And if we indeed are, then we certainly don't know what are the reasons because of which we might be doing so. So the problem comes when we start reasoning out and come up with the reasons like Indian population probably has a better resistance to the virus, or some people say that the virus becomes weaker in warmer environments, the kind of which exists in India, or there are some other reasons as well. So there is no scientific basis for any one of these reasons right now, although some indications have been made and there have been some proposals that have been put forward by scientists, but none of these have been conclusively proven. So comparisons are totally fine. It's just that we should be slightly wary of trying to attribute reasons to this.
Also, one term we've heard a lot since the pandemic began is this term flattening the curve. It's been used to justify the lockdown. It's been used a lot. Has India really flattened the curve? And if so, what benefits can we hope to derive from it?
Yeah, so we indeed have flattened the curve. Again, with this term, a lot of people misunderstand this flattening of the curve. When the curve is flattened, it does not mean that the number of cases will come down. The number of cases can continue to rise. By flattening of the term, we just mean that the rate at which those numbers are rising, that slows down. So instead of adding 100 cases every day, if we start adding just 50 or 60 every day, we would call it a flattening of the curve, because the growth is not happening at the same pace, but we are still adding in absolute numbers. We'll still be adding cases, right? So it's a largely misunderstood term. A lot of people confuse it to mean that as the curve gets flattened or as the curve is bent, it would result in the number of cases coming down. That would not happen until unless the curve actually starts going in the downward direction, and we haven't come to that stage as yet. It's still going in the upward direction, but the slope is not as steep as it was earlier. And the main reason for the flattening of the curve in India has been the lockdown. And we have seen how the lockdown has had an impact in slowing down the spread of the disease. And that is what the flattening of the curve is, that it has slowed down the spread. The pace at which the disease was spreading has slowed down from its earlier pace.
And what are the benefits we can hope to derive from it?
So as the spread slows down, it gives the government and the authorities, health authorities, enough time to prepare themselves to deal with a larger influx of patients when the restrictions ease. So adding, say, 50 cases instead of 100 that we could have been adding in the absence of a lockdown, that means that the hospital authorities would have to deal with people, and they are much better positioned to deal with them effectively, while at the same time it gives the government enough time to prepare for a larger influx sometime later. So there's a breathing space. It just creates a breathing space for you to prepare yourself to deal with the crisis at a later stage. It doesn't put the virus away. The virus doesn't go anywhere, but the infection rate slows down. And that's very, very important. In fact, in India's case, we have reached 100,000 cases yesterday, that is on Monday. And there are numbers to show that if India had not imposed a lockdown, this 100,000 number would have been reached by the end of April itself. So this lockdown has actually resulted in slowing down, at least as far as this 100,000 milestone is concerned. It has delayed the arrival of that milestone by about 3 weeks. Effectively, it has given the authorities 3 more weeks to deal with that kind of number. So in these 3 weeks, hopefully, the authorities would have prepared themselves much better to be able to deal with 100 cases rather than 3 weeks earlier. So that's what this flattening the curve does. It gives you enough time, some breathing space to prepare yourself.
The city of Mumbai is presently the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic in India. Data so far shows that around 3% of those infected with the virus in the city need critical care. That might seem like a small number of patients, and the state claims to be prepared for these numbers. But there's still an acute shortage of hospital beds. The Indian Express's Tabassum Nagarwala has been reporting on the situation in Mumbai for weeks now and joins us now to explain the current situation in the financial capital and what measures are being taken. So Tabassum, how is Mumbai handling the COVID-19 pandemic so far?
Till yesterday night, there were over 21,000 cases in Mumbai, which is a little less than 1/3 of India's burden. So the problem that multiple levels. One, that is the biggest problem as of now, is how to treat critically and severely ill COVID patients. There is enough facility arrangement for people who have symptoms, mild symptoms and moderate symptoms, and people who are asymptomatic. There are enough beds and facilities for them. But when it comes to people who require oxygen support or intensive care unit, Mumbai is really struggling to admit these patients and treat them. So I think the biggest challenge that right now Mumbai is facing is this coordination that government is trying to do with private hospitals. There is a lot of back and forth going on. There's a lot of bargaining happening, negotiations happening to bring private hospitals on board and start admitting patients there. Because as on today, there are just 20% beds available in private sector for COVID patients as opposed to 80% that public hospitals are handling.
Tabassum, you've actually spoken about this about 2 weeks back as well. You did an episode with my colleague Shashank about how the private sector isn't really stepping into the fullest extent yet. So what are the measures that are being planned to bring the private sector into the game?
So a lot has changed in the last fortnight. There have been a lot of meetings that have happened. What happened yesterday was that private hospitals have assured that they are going to reserve between 2,500 to 2,900 beds only for COVID patients. This includes about 400 intensive care units. So their commitment is that we right now at this point cannot reserve beyond this because we do not have enough staffers at hand. Currently, private hospitals have less than 1,000 beds in entire Mumbai for COVID patients. So that is now going to increase to 2,500 to 2,900. So this 1,500 extra beds will in some or the other way help critically ill and severely ill patients. Another thing that is happening is government is also negotiating with private hospitals over the price capping. So the current arrangement that they are aiming to have is that 80% beds will be reserved in private hospitals, which will be handled by the government. There will be a central database on which the details of these beds would be put on. And then as and when a bed is vacant, patients will be allotted to these hospitals by government body. So there's going to be a central helpline which will coordinate all these beds. So these 80% beds that will be reserved in private hospitals would be for both coronavirus and non-coronavirus treatment. Now, the problem that private hospitals have with this kind of arrangement is that government has asked them to charge those 80% beds as per state government schedule of rates, which is really low as compared to what private hospitals usually charge. For example, they charge about 10 to 20,000 for an intensive care unit for a day per patient, and the government is asking them that you cannot charge beyond 2,000 rupees. The private hospitals are arguing that they do not have enough manpower, they are running in losses, elective surgeries have stopped, and they need to generate revenue so that they can pay salaries to their staffers. So those negotiations are still happening. We are still waiting for some clarity on how, the bed allocation and the charges would be for both coronavirus and non-coronavirus patients.
This then brings me to my next question that, you've spoken about this sort of shortage of beds. With the private sector providing some more beds, is that enough really? Because you've also written in the past about how there's suddenly a shortage of beds in Mumbai.
Yes, so if you actually see the data, Mumbai has the largest number of beds a city could reserve for coronavirus patients. The problem is that there are 5,000 beds for critically and moderately ill COVID patients. And that is where a shortage is being observed, which is why private hospitals are being roped in so that they could treat critically ill patients. But what is happening currently is that of these 5,000 beds, almost 95 to 97% beds are full at any given point of time. There are days when the capacity is 100% and people are put on waiting list and they have to wait for a few hours to 1 or 2 days before a bed gets available. So in cases where a person has low oxygen saturation level, they need urgent admission and urgent oxygen support, and that is not happening. So the government is scared that they might actually start losing people and the fatality rate might increase if admissions don't happen on time. This shortage is also happening due to multiple reasons. We have been talking to a lot of state government officials to get a sense, and at this point we have enough beds. 5,000 beds for critically ill and moderately ill patients is not a small number, it is a huge number. But the problem comes in coordination. There are a lot of mild asymptomatic people who are admitted on these beds, which are actually meant for severely ill people. So hospitals need to coordinate better. And when a patient becomes stable, they are supposed to push that stable patient to the next level of care, which is a dedicated COVID health facility or a COVID care center. But that shifting is not happening on time. So until the patient is discharged, he continues to occupy that hospital bed, because of which other patients are on the wait list. So that coordination angle needs to improve. Government is working on that. Meanwhile, they're also increasing the number of beds. For example, in public hospitals, which are the BMC run and the state government run hospitals, about 3,300 more beds would be added in the coming days. So by May end, we are hoping to have between 6,000 to 10,000 beds for critically ill and moderately ill patients.
So does the change in quarantine norms that has happened now, where you're saying mild asymptomatic patients need not even be admitted to a hospital, they can be kept at home? I think Delhi's perhaps got the highest number. Is that something expected to help?
Yes. So the current guidelines for coronavirus patients are that if a patient is mildly symptomatic or asymptomatic and can afford to have home isolation, by that we mean they have a separate toilet and they have a separate room where the risk of infection to other family members is zero, then they can observe home isolation. After a period of 10 days, they don't even need to undergo a test and they can come out of home isolation because the viral load reduces in 6 to 7 days. For people who are mildly symptomatic or asymptomatic, but they live in slums and do not have access to a separate toilet, they would be isolated in a COVID care center. These are jumbo facilities across Mumbai where hotels, lodges, halls, community halls, schools have been taken over by BMC to keep these kinds of patients. The next category is of moderately ill patients who are put in the dedicated COVID health facilities. Even they don't need to undergo a test during discharge. After 10 days, if they develop no symptoms, they could just be discharged without a test. A test is only required for severely ill people at the end of 10 or 14 days. Once the test comes negative, they can be discharged. So the policy has changed, and that also ensures that there is a quick discharge now happening of patients. So this is again a way of sort of freeing up beds faster than the previous procedure was allowing them.
Tabassum, you've also reported about how people are standing outside the city's KEM hospital in central Bombay, waiting for treatment by doctors. Again, the private sector is stepping in. But how bad is it if you've currently got any other ailment and if you're in Bombay?
See, in Mumbai, generally during monsoons and even throughout the year, public hospitals are always overcrowded. During monsoons, we always come across cases where there are 2 patients occupying 1 bed. So that is a problem which has been existing since a really long time. But right now, what is happening is there is so much fear and panic around coronavirus that people don't know what to do. So there are people coming to KEM hospital because it is a government facility. Second, they are taking all kinds of patients, be it coronavirus, non-coronavirus. Third, smaller hospitals nearby are all shut. Their OPDs are not functioning. So even that crowd is now coming to KEM hospital. Because of these factors, they are seeing a larger number of people in OPD as compared to, say in December last year, before the pandemic broke. Now, the problem that is happening is each patient is considered a suspected coronavirus case and they have to undergo a test. At least most of them have to undergo a COVID test. And until the results come, there is no clarity where to put these patients. All the beds are full. So they have to wait in the emergency wards corridors, or they have to sleep on the pavement outside until a bed is available. We came across people who were waiting for 10 hours to 26 hours for a bed. And it's a very sorry state of affairs because a lot of patients who are not coronavirus patients feel that they are being neglected because the focus is on COVID. So the first question that hospitals are asking is, do you have fever, cough, and cold? And the decision on treating that patient is based on whether he or she has fever, cough, and cold. So a lot of heart patients are actually facing this problem of, getting admission and getting treated because they have to first undergo a COVID test.
Cyclone Ampan is expected to cause heavy to very heavy rainfall and flooding as it advances landwards from the Bay of Bengal towards West Bengal and Bangladesh. The super cyclone that weakened into an extremely severe cyclonic storm on Tuesday is expected to make landfall along Digha in West Bengal and the Hatia Islands in Bangladesh. Wind speeds are expected to go over 195 km per hour on Wednesday. Ampan is only the second super cyclone to have formed in the Bay of Bengal in the last 2 decades. The Directorate of Flood Forecasting warned on Tuesday that the continuous rainfall could lead to a significant rise in the water level of many small rivers and rivulets along Gangetic, West Bengal. There is expected to be flooding in many parts of the state, major destruction to mud houses, power lines, and trees due to the cyclone. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee said that at least 3 lakh people have been evacuated from 3 coastal districts of the state and moved to relief shelters. Authorities say they have attempted to maintain social distancing while keeping people in shelters. Banerjee also requested the railways not to bring migrant workers from other states into West Bengal till Thursday morning as a precautionary measure. You were listening to 3 Things by The Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to it wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a rating or review. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet to us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.